Good morning and welcome to New Day Saturday edition. My name is Abna Tibi. It is the 14th day of April 2018. It's a beautiful Saturday morning and we're thankful to be alive, and we're back here to do what we like to do best, which is deliberate over issues of national importance. Once again, welcome, and we are running from now till 9:50, where conversations will be brought to a close. As usual, we're coming to you live from the studios of TV3 here in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7 and streaming live around the world at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. A number of issues coming up for today's conversations, quite interesting topics we'll be looking at this morning on the show. I'll be outlining these topics very soon, and we'll encourage you to send through your comments, your questions, whatever it is you have to share with us in respect of these topics coming out soon. So today on the show, what are we looking at? We'll start off with the conversations around PIAC's findings. Now, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, a body that is set up under the Petroleum Revenue Management Act to monitor and evaluate compliance by government and other relevant institutions in the management and use of the petroleum revenues and investments, organized a press conference this week, specifically on Tuesday, the 10th of April 2018. Now, at this press conference, PIAC released findings of its composite report on district engagements and project inspections covering the period 2011 to 2016. The report appears to not only disclose several instances of improper use of our oil revenue, but also discloses instances of poor supervision regarding the implementation of projects which are funded by our oil revenue, specifically the annual budget funding amount, ABFA. Now, we shall be discussing the findings of PIAC's report and how, as a nation, we can perhaps reverse the trend to ensure the judicious use of our oil revenue for the benefit of today's generation as well as generations unborn. Also up for discussion is the Bank of Ghana's directive on recapitalization of banks and matters arising. So, as part of plans to reform the financial sector, the Bank of Ghana, sometime in September 2017, issued a notice to banks to recapitalize or to increase their paid-up capital from 120 million Ghana cedis to 400 million Ghana cedis. Now, we are made to understand that the purpose of this increment, among others, is to further develop, strengthen and modernize the financial sector to support the government of Ghana's agenda for the economic agenda and transformation agenda. Now, all existing banks have up till the 31st of December 2018 to meet the new minimum paid-up capital set by the bank. As the deadline approaches, a coalition of some indigenous banks this week petitioned the president to intervene for the extension of the deadline, as in their estimation, a lot of the indigenous banks may not be able to meet the 31st December 2018 deadline. Now, we shall be looking at this development and matters arising. Also up for discussion is the alleged double dipping in the executive bowl and the legislative bowl when it comes to salaries by some former officials of the John Dramani Mahama administration. This is one of the stories that made the headlines this week, and we shall be looking at this. We are told that these persons were invited by the Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service to assist in investigations. We shall be discussing the matters arising in respect of this particular story. And lastly, we will be looking at the new developments coming out of Ghana's participation in the 2018 Commonwealth Games. Now, last week we discussed this topic about some 60 persons who had posed as Ghanaian journalists, ostensibly to go to the games to cover same. Now, the new development with this story is that the Deputy Minister of Sports, Mr. Pius Hadije, who also doubled as the head of the International Games Committee, along with the head or the acting director of the National Sports Authority, Mr. Robert Safo-Mensah have been suspended by the president, and 3 others, we are told, have also been recalled from the Games in Australia to assist with investigations by the CID of the Ghana Police Service. These are the topics we've outlined for today's conversations. At this point, we'll take a break. When we come back, we will meet the panelists for today's conversations and we'll get straight into the business for today. You're watching and listening to New Day, Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to New Day, Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and live online around the world at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. I will quickly introduce the panel for today's conversations. From my left, we have the Honorable Obi Amwa. He is a lawyer, also MP for Ekwapim South Constituency, and the Deputy Minister, Local Government and Rural Development. Next, we have Professor Clement Jidonu. He is the President of the Accra Institute of Technology. And also up is Honorable Inusa Abdullahi Fuseni. He is also a lawyer, MP for Tamale Central, ranking member for the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. He also served as the Lands and Natural Resources Minister and Roads and Highways Minister during the John Dramani Mahama administration. We're expecting another panelist to join us soon. When he comes in, we'll do the needful and introduce him accordingly. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We have a new face here, and so a special welcome to you, Honorable Inusa Fuseni. It's good to have you. Great. So we'll be starting off with a number of topics made the headlines, obviously, but one perhaps, stuck out quite strongly. This is the PIAC report that was, if you like, released on Tuesday at a press conference that the PIAC organized, and we'll be looking at that first. We have an audio, a video that we'd like to listen and watch, and then when we come back, we will carry on with the conversation. So if it's ready, kindly let's have it rolled.
Spread is the practice of commingling of funds without even stating what percentage of the project cost is being financed with oil revenue. It is not possible to curtail commingling altogether. Then if funds have to serve as a top-up for the completion of a project, we need to state clearly what percentage contribution the petroleum revenue is.
PIAC is, however, not oblivious of the fact that most of these meager amounts were intended to be counterpart funds. But this does not in any way minimize the committee's concerns that impact evaluation becomes difficult with such meager allocations. Delayed execution and resultant cost overruns. The committee has observed that the ministers of finance over the years have not complied with the provision of updates on the status of implementation of oil-funded projects. Contracts for the execution of projects and any associated variation orders should be awarded only after it is certain that the funds needed to complete the projects will be available.
Good. So that was the chairperson of PIAC, Dr. Steve Mantiao, there at the press conference. Now, I'll start with you, Honorable Obi Amwa. Looking at the report and, of course, listening to the chairperson and other members of the committee, I perhaps would want to categorize their findings into some, under certain headings. One, non-existence of projects. Two, you have delays in implementation, which leads to cost variations, which, according to the report, is quite on the high side. There's also the lack of involvement of communities in the selection of projects and implementation, which, according to them, has an effect on accountability and the fact that the communities are detached from it because it's perhaps not something that is of priority to them. And then also another important thing has to do with the fact that finance ministers over the years have failed to play a certain role that is given them under the statute, which is the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. So I would want us to look at these areas, and perhaps, of course, you'd also have your areas that you would, be targeting. But if we're starting with the non-existence of projects, for instance, this is quite serious. I do know that it's been denied, but it's quite serious that such a finding would be made, that funds are allocated and actually disbursed, but there's nothing to show for. How many of such, things are there, and why do we seem to have this?
Yes, thank you so much, and good morning to viewers and listeners, and to my co-panelists, my good friends on the panel. First, we have to commend PIAC for such a report. Indeed, under the Revenue Management Act, they are required to give us an annual report on how the whole petroleum revenue has been managed. But the report that they've brought is what they call the composite report, on trying to look at how we have utilized the funds, petroleum revenue, vis-a-vis projects and other things that we promised the good people of Ghana that we will do. That is the government, and then with parliamentary approval. And based on their report, which is quite extensive and revealing, they've concluded that 50% of projects in the 3 northern regions cannot be identified, even though funds had been allocated for such projects. They're saying that the projects in question are projects which funds were provided, or for which funds were provided in 2014. That is the benchmark year, 2014. And that's at the time that they concluded their report. They could not identify the projects. Indeed, in 2016, they requested the finance minister to provide more information on the said projects because they couldn't identify them. And then I don't know, I think since then too, they may have requested the present finance minister to also provide information. But along the line, the former deputy minister for energy came out to try to debunk it. But PIAC has come back. They've come back to say that they stand by the findings and the facts, and that indeed it wasn't about 2017 as the deputy minister wanted to put across. It was 2014, and that was the year that we really had so much revenue from petroleum exports. So it's a very good report. It's a very good step. It's a way of checking how we manage our petroleum funds. And indeed, if you read the report, I have some excerpts here. The main issues that they engaged, those that they engaged, it's about over 1,600 participants that they engaged. There were several issues, so this aspect is even one aspect.
Just 1 year
of the several issues which they raised, and I think that we should help PIAC for their report to be implemented and for some of these things to be addressed. And then indeed they said because they were not getting answers, they referred the matter to the Auditor General, and we expect the Auditor General to also follow up and then find a way of bringing out what PIAC has found and how it should be addressed, and those who are responsible should answer for those things.
Very well. I mean, you said that the reports, perhaps the recommendations should be implemented and all, but this isn't the first time something of this nature, in terms of an audit, if you like, has been done in respect of projects, and us coming to similar conclusions or findings. So I'm just thinking, it must take a lot of guts for a contractor who's been given money to not do the job, which goes to show the kind of, if you like, monitoring and supervision challenges that we have, and why that has been allowed to persist for some time, raising issues about deterrence and others like that.
Yes, it's a very serious matter. It's a whole governance system. How do you procure? How did you identify these contractors? How did they get funding for the project? How come that funding has been provided, but there's no project to show? Where have the funds gone? Have the funds been paid to the contractor who has not gone to site to work? Or the funds have been released, but they've not been paid at all? And if they've not been paid, what have they used the funds for? All these are critical issues that should be addressed so that we know exactly where the problems are and how to address it. And as you said, even though this is a composite report, by the Revenue Management Act, PIAC is supposed to submit annual reports. And by the annual reports, they raise some of these issues. How do we address the issues they raise? Or is it that they just submit it, it comes to Parliament, we debate, and that's the end of it? Who is supposed to ensure that these reports are scrutinized and then the recommendations and findings are implemented?
Right.
So it's good that they are coming out. I like the way they are really working, in spite of the usual complaints that they don't have all the resources to be able to work with, even though there's so much revenue. If you look at some of the reports, I have some of the reports here. This is the PIAC report for 2014. And the 2014, all the projects that they are talking about, they are listed based on whether it's education or it's agric or it's energy. So under the education infrastructure, they looked at, for instance, Northern region, you have construction of 6-unit classroom block, Ipegu, that's Nafango, Ipegu. There are some in Ashanti, some in Eastern, some in Western. So they said they picked the 3 Northern regions, Upper East, Upper West, and Northern region. And based on the reports, and they went to the ground, it's not just desktop report.
They had their engagement with the people.
It's come out that they cannot identify the projects. So if there are contrary findings or opinions, they should come out. But I like the point that they've referred it to the Auditor General. The Auditor General too should come out with his findings, and the corporates should be brought to book.
Very well. Let me go to Honorable Hussaini here for Honorable, your initial perspectives about this report.
Well, thank you so very much, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Really delighted to be here.
Yes.
First time ever. I think that basically I share largely in what my colleague has said. We, as a people of this country, when we discovered oil, decided that we were going to put in regulatory mechanisms to ensure that the proceeds from the oil benefited the people.
Right.
I mean, we have one of the robust regulatory regimes in the oil management sector. And so, as part of the...
Is it that robust?
It's very robust.
If we are finding out these things.
Yeah, it's because it's robust. That's why we're finding out those things. Yeah.
Well, there could be a counter to that, though.
Yeah. I mean, so what I'm saying is that we put up this, we set up these mechanisms to ensure that we actually monitor, track the oil revenue and then how it is utilized. The whole Revenue Management Act was on that. Utilization of oil revenue and ensuring that it benefits the people. Now, we also said that, look, to be able to ensure that we don't leave out the ordinary people from the management process, we set up PIAC, so that they become part of the an interest group, where citizens, they become the citizens to partake in the monitoring and utilization of the petroleum revenue. And so it's good that they have done that. My only worry is that the report is talking about 2000 and
it spans 2011 to 2016.
2016, composite 2000. So the difficulty is that the lapse of time.
Exactly, which is what I was raising with regard to your statement about it being robust, the system.
No, the lapse of time.
Yes.
The lapse of time could be one of the difficulties that they have to overcome, because you say, if a project was to be implemented in 2011, you expected that they will act timeously to let us have the reports and what was happening, so that if there were proactive measures we could take to ensure that the funds were utilized in such a way as to benefit the people, we will take such proactive steps. But as it is, they've done the right thing. They've gone round. They say that 50% of the projects cannot be discovered or identified. They have to refer their report to the Auditor General. The Auditor General will raise queries. Those who are responsible will have to provide answers, and so then we can move forward.
Right. Now, one other thing that's coming up in their press conference, and you heard Dr. Mantial there, about the ministers' role in providing status updates? I think they are lamenting about that seriously, even though they, as PIAC, also have the responsibility to do their monitoring and engagements with the communities. What do you think has been the reason, or has made it impossible, if you like, or difficult for the finance ministers to do what PIAC is complaining about, the status updates?
Yeah, and let me disclose, PIAC and the Petroleum Management Revenue Act was part of my studies, the station when I was doing the LLM.
Okay.
And it's largely by reason of the powers vested in the finance minister. I mean, he has to provide the report to Parliament. He has to set up the investment advisory board. There are many things. He has to choose the sectors that he thinks government should prioritize, admittedly with the president and government in cabinet. Right. These are the sectors where the ABFA will be used, and he has to provide the initial monitoring and account of the utilization of the resources. So he's quite powerful.
Yes.
And so because of that, you need to look for steps and ways to curtail and bring in some of this power into an accountable framework.
Right.
So if he doesn't do it, you remember the first time.
But they're saying that it's not been done. The finance ministers have not been doing that. That's the lamentation of PIAC. And I'm asking why that has happened all this while.
Well, I can say that, or I will say that probably we're still developing the practice. When we started, the finance minister used not to present the utilization report together with the budget, but we demanded in Parliament and said that, look, anytime you come to present the budget statement, you must lay also the report. Now there is compliance, and so yes, maybe Parliament will have to take it up and demand that certain things be done in such a way as to engender more transparency in the utilization of the funds.
Right. Quickly, one more thing, and then I go to Prof here. Still on the finance minister's role, some are suggesting that perhaps the finance minister himself or the finance ministry is quite involved in a number of, so many things already. So perhaps to help them with their work, why don't we then get the MMDAs involved so that you have it decentralized, and then they are able to coordinate, and then, there's a certain structure, whereas everything is left at the central level where we are having challenges with these reports coming in. Because one of the findings of PIAC's report is that the communities are detached from it, and the MMDAs are not necessarily involved in these projects.
Yes, but they are involved.
To what extent?
That's what
yes.
What the finance minister does is to collect in revenue and then come to Parliament for the allocation formula, okay, and the selection of priority areas.
Right.
And then in selecting the priority areas, he then goes back, and that money complements whatever revenue we are going to generate. Okay. Now, that money cannot be used by the finance ministry. It's not used by the finance ministry. It's part of the allocations to the various ministries. So they are involved. I mean, you can't say that. The only thing
the MMDAs, as in the municipal metropolitan, yes, at the ground, yes.
The municipal
metropolitan district assemblies.
But the local government is supposed to be involved.
But they are not. That's what PIAC is saying.
It's part of their report.
Yeah, okay. So the local government is supposed to be involved.
Yes.
Because at that level, the local government ministries should know that these projects are going to complement government in the provision of these services at a decentralized level.
Exactly.
And so they can monitor. And secondly, you see, they complain about something, commingling of funds. Because it's the ABFA which goes to support the budget. Now, it becomes difficult, and that's their limitation. But I think they should find a way to overcome the difficulty. You're saying that it becomes difficult to trace and track the funds, the utilization of the funds, because the funds are
counterpart funding arrangements. Is what
they are commingled. They say so. The ministry makes allocations to the relevant department or ministry for use in developing or constructing some facilities. Now, the money goes, you are not able to tell which part is the ABFA and which part is government revenue. And so that also will be an impediment to tracking, because you don't know how the utilization is done. And so I think that going forward, we should be able to separate the funds and determine exactly what part of the funds that are made available for construction works for a particular project comes from the ABFA.
Wow, I would want us to interrogate that some more when the PIAC representative joins us. But let me go to Prof. Jidonu. Your thoughts about this report. A number of projects non-existent, others shoddily done, and other matters coming up. And like I said earlier, this isn't necessarily something new. We do have it all the time, and we sit around it, and it happens again.
Yes, good morning to you and my colleagues, and good morning to your listeners all over the world. Yes, I think you made a point. These things do happen and continue to happen. Before we discover oil, our situation was not very great. As a country, we lack money to do a lot of things. Then we got oil. Then our expectations were raised that we got oil now, things are going to change. If you go on the streets of Ghana now, ask every average Ghanaian, do you think the oil that we discovered have changed your life or changed your situation? Most of them will say, we don't even know that this oil is actually there. Probably some things have been done, some schools have been built, some roads have been constructed, but the ordinary Ghanaian don't really know exactly what this oil windfall, I'll call it a windfall, okay? We don't used to have it, so it's a windfall, actually impacted on our lives. That's my first point. Now, for me, sometimes it's good to ask questions that you don't have answers to now.
Yes, you're just throwing them out there.
Very good, yes. So we don't have answers, but the answers are there. We will discover the answers. But the question for me is, when we get the answers, will they come back to us again? That yes, the missing projects or the funded projects which we cannot see down there, we have not discovered them. For me, those are easy things. We can find them out, okay? Either the project is implemented or not implemented. There's no theory about that,
right.
Okay? Now, for me, the water issue is that it happens in other things. This is oil money, okay?
Yes.
Oil money. PIAC was supposed, and other agencies supposed to monitor it. What about other projects or other monies from other sources, other projects? If it's true that 6 out of 6 projects, 3 were not found. What about the other projects on the other other areas that we do? On the issue about the shoddy work that they've reported on, it's happening all over the place. So for me, this report goes beyond
the oil revenue
issue. Okay, we are people where this thing is happening every day. It's good that the former Minister of Roads is here. We see sometimes constructors control the road. Within a few years, there's a problem with them. Now, I like the point you made about the monitoring by the Ministry of this. PIAC is not an organization set up just to monitor. There might be a government institution who would monitor the implementation of this project. Did we hear from them? What are they doing on this particular project? Could they confirm or deny the report produced by PIAC? So for me, this casts a water issue to we as people in terms of how we spend our little money. We don't have a lot of it. Whether we spend judicially, and more importantly, how do we actually account for this money? And also there's also a debate between the political parties. They are saying that some people are saying that the budget for some of these projects were not available. But the question we want to ask, we can find a straight answer. Were these projects actually funded?
Exactly, and that's according to PIAC, these were actually funded. So
very good. So they were funded, but we cannot see them on the ground. So as of involving the communities in it, it will be great to do that.
Totally.
And it will be very easy to do. And not only for this project, for a lot of other projects that we do.
And it would increase accountability because the people are vested in the project.
Yes.
They would want to see it progress.
Very good. So it's all part of, now we are in an information age. All this information can be made available to us. What is wrong with actually giving us a list of projects, okay, oil revenue funded projects in our neighborhood? So that everybody say, look, you see that school we are building down there, it came from the oil revenue. Keep an eye on it. You see? Keep an eye on it as a local community, as a local authority, okay, as what do you call it, religious body, keep an eye on this project, and so that we can all be able to monitor this project. We don't have to wait for a report by a particular organization and then there's a debate whether those projects exist or don't exist. For me, it casts a wider issue than only on the issue of revenue projects.
Right. Another side to the issue about the local community's involvement has to do with project selection. So yes, there's a need for citizens or the local communities to get involved in implementation, as in monitoring. But I think one thing that PIAC was trying to suggest with the fact that local communities are not involved at the point of selection has to do with we see projects perhaps springing up, but they are not of necessity to the communities. So needs assessment to determine what the communities want, and then we go do it for them. That way it enhances their interest in there. So even before we get to implementation is the issue about their involvement in selecting projects. What would you say to that, Prof?
Yeah, basically, look, every community have a long shopping list. We all know our needs and some things to be done. We know. When you go to every community, they say, look, this borehole needs to be fixed. Okay, this school needs to be fixed. We have the list. Sometimes government and their operators, sometimes you know those lists. So we know better. We have a national budget. We have a national picture. We are looking at it, and then we're going to use that as a base for selection. Yeah, you're correct.
Right.
It is to be very easy to involve the community, okay, in an organized format, because they all do have. And one way to start from is probably the local. What do you call it? The local government people, the district assemblies. They have the shopping list,
right?
A long list that they don't have money to fund. So I think it will be very easy for it to
the medium-term development plans.
They have them. They all have them. If you go to even a village, they will tell you exactly what they want fixed. Okay, so we can put in a kind of an infrastructure, a system where we say, this is the way we are going to select the project. Bring your project to this level, select, shortlist it, bring it to the local level, and bring it all the way out to the Ministry of Local Government, and then we take it from there. I will be very surprised if that kind of structure is not there.
Right.
If it's not there, of course, yes. It's
We
very
should
easy.
get it in there.
It's very easy to do.
Right.
Probably government don't want to do it that way. That yes, I don't
Well,
know.
we have the deputy. Yes, we have the deputy minister
Yes.
for local government here. So if Honourable Obiamo, you could speak to that, and then I do a follow-up question.
Well, if you look at the report, one of the issues raised by PIAC is the fact that they get to their districts, and the district authorities don't appear to be aware of the project as to whether it's being funded by the oil money. So they were even recommending that, like what happened under President Kufuor, where you put up a project, you put the HIPIC project, this time around should be funded by oil money or something to that effect, so that everybody will know that these are the projects which have come out of the oil revenue.
But that would be after the project is done.
That's after the project is done, but
during,
not before.
Yes.
So the other issue even raised by participants and PIAC itself was the fact that they are not aware of the projects. They don't have access to how the projects are once selected, where the projects are, and how they should monitor it. So it's when years after they're able to get hold of the information, they go to the ground, and sometimes they see that there's nothing there. If they had information right from the beginning, then they could monitor it. They say that after 6 months, this is what has happened.
Right.
Within a year or the project cycle, nothing has happened, even though the project is supposed to have been completed by this time. So there are all critical things. But if you look at the report, other issues have been raised.
Other issues which I want us to look at, why certain funds or certain entities received funding from, they talk about Maslog, the Venture Capital Trust and all, and they're raising questions as to that. Now, my question is, and when Honourable Hussein was speaking, he talked about the priority areas. We do know that for this, the revenue, oil revenue and all, there are 12 priority areas. And for certain specific times, there's a certain focus on about 4 or so. For some time, we've been focusing on certain areas. We do know that we are moving from 2017 to 2019, and there's a certain focus area now. So my question is, how does the allocation of funds to entities like Maslog, Venture Capital Trust, and the likes help us achieve the objectives of the priority areas?
Well, it's part of how we manage things, in the sense that even before that, PIAC is complaining that in election year, there appears to be projects which are related to elections, projects geared towards winning votes for the incumbent. And that, if you look at Maslock and Venture Capital Fund, they give out loans. And the more you're able to give these microfinance loans and small loans, the more people get access to these things, and the more probably the government becomes popular. The issue they are raising is that, one, how do you give out these loans to these institutions? Have you prioritized that under the budget? Two, where is the evidence that the loans given to these institutions to also give out, they'll be able to retrieve the loans and pay it back to ABFA? And it appears that is not what is happening. Because in the first place, if you look at Maslock, sometimes the default rate is very high. So if they will not be able to retrieve the loans that they've given out, obviously they will not be able to pay to the ABFA. The same with venture capital, they are also in serious distress. There are so many issues about those who have taken funds from venture capital fund and how they have not been able to pay back. So if these monies are from the revenue money, that means the revenue money is suffering because they are not able to pick them and pay back. It shows that we need to really sit up and manage some of these things very well. That's why I'm saying that the report is very good, and we should all study it carefully and see how to implement it and even prevent. The most critical thing is we should learn lessons from this and prevent it happening again. It's not that governments will come and governments will go and the same issues will be coming up. That will not show progress and development.
Very well. Honourable Professor, you want to say something quickly then? Because we were expecting the PIAC representative here, so we could have... I hear he's on his way, he'll be here soon, but we would need to move on to another subject. When he comes, then we do that.
And I agree with Prof. The problem is, and actually, Honourable Obiamo touched on it. You see, the ABFA is an annual budget funding amount. So it goes straight to the budget. Okay? And so when it goes to the budget, it funds projects. Now, it's difficult to be able to separate the funds because it moves straight into the consolidated fund, move from the consolidated fund to the budget support, and then it's funded. I think what we should do, and I agree entirely with the panelists, is can we find a way, a mechanism, to separate the funds? And say, look, if government of Ghana is going to provide X, and that X will be complemented by Y from the annual budget funding amount, that the annual budget funding amount should be exclusively and entirely used for A, B, C, D projects, so that me and you can now monitor. Because the way it is, it's lost. It's budget support, so it's lost to us, and tracking becomes difficult.
Very well. Quickly, so we will move on to look at the double payment of salaries to former MPs, but we will get back to this PIAC conversation when we have the representative of PIAC, Dr. Kwabena Nyarko, to join us pretty soon. Now, Honourable Fuseni, start us off with this one. This, I'm being told we have a video of that to launch us into the conversation. So let's take a look at that, and then we'll come back to Honourable Fuseni.
Last week, 25 of us received strange letters and phone calls from the CID of the Ghana Police Service, inviting us to confer with Mrs. M.Y.T. Adodankwa, Deputy Commissioner of Police, and to assist in investigations of allegations of double salaries made against us by the government. In a bizarre twist, as we were readying to appear before the CID this week, beginning from yesterday, considering what we had been grouped to appear on a separate days, the CID called some of our colleagues to inform them that they were no longer required to appear, as they had made mistakes with 18 of the 25 minority MPs originally contacted. Our attention has been drawn to a publication in today's Daily Guide newspaper, alleging that some 22 Article 71 appointees of the elsewhere Mahama administration were overpaid while serving as ministers, deputy ministers, and members of parliament. The said publication can only be figment of the imagination of the government that continues to betray the trust of the people. We must state for the records that, contrary to the claims by the Daily Guide that no appointee has offered to make refund of double salaries. We challenge the Daily Guide to adduce evidence of this claim. We also find it curious that the Daily Guide was unable to produce the full list of the alleged 22 appointees. The NDC minority stands ready to submit to the highest standard of accountability any day. We know a witch hunt, and we can see one when it's coming. We wish to send a crystal clear message to the Kufuor government that the minority will not be intimidated nor cowed into shirking our responsibility and our democratic and constitutional duties. We shall remain resolute, faithful to our mandate and the high expectations of the people who elected us to represent them in Parliament.
Okay, so that was a press conference held by the minority in reaction to that allegation. And Honourable, let me play the devil's advocate here, just for purposes of, education and everything. Yes. The Constitution anticipates and indeed enjoins the President to elect majority of his ministers from Parliament. Yes. So that is a no doubt that, yes, you would have the situations where MPs serve as ministers. Clearly, that's there. And in that circumstance, MPs who serve as ministers would be seen to be doing, if you like, double work as compared to their counterparts who are either in the executive solely or in the legislature solely. So tell us, I just want to understand how the arrangement for such a situation is like, where you have one person serving in both arms of government as opposed to the others who may not necessarily serve in both. What kind of arrangement is there in respect of salaries? Just start us off on that, and then we can now go into this allegation. Because I think people will be wondering that, isn't it perhaps fair that, yes, people are working in both arms? They're doing double what others are doing. So
you should get double.
What is, yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm playing the devil's advocate here. Let's just start on that, and then let's understand. We go forward.
Well, but that's quite interesting. And but the whole argument of whether or not MPs who were ministers under His Excellency John Dramani Mahamad's government received double salary is actually a question of law. Because the whole salary arrangement and the determination of salaries of MPs and ministers is captured in Article 71.
Right.
Article 71 has 3 provisions. The provision 71(1) actually talks about the salaries of Speaker, Deputy Speakers, members of Parliament, and all those
Chief
coming
Justice,
there,
other justices,
whose salaries shall be approved upon the setting up of a committee by the President of members of not more than 5, okay, whose salaries shall be approved by the President, by the Executive. 72 talks about the President, his Vice, the Council of State, and others, whose salaries...
71(2).
71(2), whose salaries will be determined by that same committee, but in this case, by Parliament.
Right.
Article 3, clause 3 talks about defined salary in the broadest of terms to include
allowances, facilities and privileges, and retirement benefits.
Now, so that's why I'm saying that the whole determination of whether or not a person has received double salary is a question of law.
No, but the thing is, the definition given to salaries under 71(3), if that is applied,
yes,
the question is, did you take double of that?
So the question now one will have to ask is, when was the salary of MPs determined such that they took double of that salary?
But they were taking salaries nonetheless.
No, so we come. So that's the misconception. It's a fundamental misconception. It's your salary is only determined upon the setting up of a committee by His Excellency the President. Until the setting up is done, myself and Obi Amwa as MPs are taking advance payments, payment on account.
Payment on account. Okay,
yes.
So what happens when the committee is set up and a salary is fixed? Say before the committee was set up, you were taking, this is just an, I'm just, for purposes, you're taking X.
Yes.
And then after the committee is set up, you're taking X plus 2,000.
Yes.
Would you be paid 2,000 extra for the number of years that you went on taken the advanced, or you would go on and take the X plus 2,000 times 2, which is the situation we're dealing with now.
No. So when the salaries are determined by the committee would have aggregated and determined the salary structure for the class of Article 71 office holders. So, for instance, if you're an MP and a deputy minister, first of all, if you're an MP simpliciter, this is your salary. If you are an MP and a deputy minister, that is your salary. If you are an MP and a minister, this is your salary. If you are an MP and a regional minister, first of all, you're an MP and a deputy regional minister, an MP and a regional minister, an MP and a cabinet minister.
So many permutations there.
Yes. So you don't have double. So it will fix one salary for you. Now, so if you receive payment prior to the determination of your salary
by the
committee, the payments that you received upfront is aggregated, and like you said, X plus 2,000.
Yes.
Then it's set off by what the committee has stipulated,
determined now,
as determined as your salary, and then the balance is paid to you. That's what happens.
Very well. So you're saying that there can be a situation where salaries of whichever category they fall, whether it's MP, cabinet minister, MP, regional minister, whatever, would take
it's first of
twice
all, in the circumstances
thrice,
that I'm talking about, it becomes a huge misnomer to say that somebody has received double salary, when in fact and indeed his salary had not been determined.
Isn't it just playing with the situation as it is? Yes.
Abdullah, let's make the matter very simple.
Honorable, are you done with your submission? Let him finish and then yes. So quickly wrap up for me and then yes.
So for me, and Obi was in Parliament in 2012, 2013 to 2017. And Honorable Obi knows that his salary was determined by a committee set up by His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. That committee submitted its report in December 2016.
No, August 2016.
Okay, August 2016, but we considered it in November 2016.
Okay.
That we all know that the salary arrears were paid to members of Parliament, ministers of state, and all Article 71 office holders. We also know that those salary payments minus or removed from all or took account of payments that were made to ministers and MPs before the payment was done. By the definition in Article 71(3), where the salaries and then the payments made in advance to Article 71 office holders exceeded the salary, the monthly salary simpliciter, the retirement benefits of such office holders were used to liquidate earlier payments.
Okay.
And so for me, well, that's why we have said that it's quite confusing to say that somebody has received double salary when indeed, and it is this government that paid the salary arrears. It is this government that paid the retirement benefits. It is this government that was enjoined to reconcile whatever payments had been made to previous Article 71 office holders and the entitlements that was due them. And so, well, we as minority, we have said that we will assist. I mean, we are useful and responsible.
Help us get to the bottom of this.
We will assist the police in investigations.
Yes.
But we just think that
Prof has a smile on his face, but I will need to come to Honorable Obiamwa and then come to you because I need to hear from that side as well quickly. Yes.
I like the posture of Honorable Hussein this morning because I listened to him somewhere and he was talking about witch hunting by government.
But it's serious witch hunting.
You finish. Well, you can come back when I finish. Even at their press conference, witch hunting by government, that attitude of everything that police wants to investigate when it doesn't suit us, then we say that it's government which is behind it. I think we should be very careful about it. Look, This is the first time that I'm MP and a minister or deputy minister. When I was deputy minister under President Kufuor, I wasn't a member of parliament. So I knew the controller was the one paying me. Now, even that, in 2009, we were giving checks by the Professor Mo's administration. So I asked, what is this check for? And I was told that the check was for those who were staying in their own homes instead of staying in government bungalows. But I said, no, I was in a government bungalow. So I returned the check. I returned the check. I wouldn't keep it and say that it's a mistake or anything. I walked straight to the presidency, the castle, and then gave them the check that, no, you've given me a check, but I think
you don't belong to a category that deserves that.
I think I'm not entitled to it because I was staying in a government bungalow. Now I'm saying that as of now, as a deputy minister, I know I'm paid from parliament. I make effort regularly to go for my pay slip to know what is on the pay slip. And my bank always advised me on what has been deposited in my account. So there's no way that I'll be paid from the parliament and controller and I will not know. So if it's whatever amount I'm paid from parliament, it goes into my account. I'm advised by my bankers. And then subsequently another advice comes, which is almost the same amount. Obviously, I should raise questions that, why are you giving me this double thing? And so if anybody should say that until the presidential committee comes out finally, whatever comes into my account, I'm saying that I think that is on account to whoever wants to question it will be witch hunting. I don't agree.
But another thing that strikes me in your submission quickly is the fact that you said the check was given to you.
Yes.
But that check, in the scheme of things, was meant for certain people.
Yes.
So then the question I'm asking now, or I'm thinking is, what kind of data
it could, that's what I'm saying,
is kept? Because then there's the likelihood that double payments will make. Because Mr. Honorable Hussein is saying it can't happen. But
No,
given this thing you're saying now, then it means it can. And it all boils down to the kind of records we have and the kinds of...
What he's saying is rent payment.
Yes.
If you are a public officer and you are living in your house, you are entitled to a certain percentage of your salary.
Yes.
Now, so if you are not in, if you are living in a government bungalow or a government establishment, and then you are paid rent advance, it's simple, it's straightforward.
I get that, Honorable, but what I'm saying is...
I was living in my house.
Yes.
So
and they were paying me advance.
I'll come to you.
When I moved to government bungalow, I informed the authorities that I'm no longer in my house. I'm now in, and that ceased because that is direct, straightforward. That's
fantastic.
That's what when your salary is determined.
But that's fine. But all I'm saying is it raises issues about the kind of records we have and the fact that if we're not dealing with certain people who would necessarily return it, then we could have situations where people would end up taking more than they deserve.
Yes, but
and that raises a red flag. You don't have to. Yes. So why is it issue to you?
It's just like even an amount which has been deposited in your account, which is mistakenly done. If you go for it, the bank will come after you to pay back the money. What I'm saying is that if, for instance, if you look at the report of the Jomama Committee, August 2016, there's a point that they made here. The salaries of all MPs should be processed by parliamentary service. And the difference between the salaries of MPs and MPs who are ministers and deputy ministers should be processed by Controller Accountant General.
Very well.
So it's a difference that Controller Accountant General, if anything, should be paying to you. But if you have the bulk from Parliament and bulk from Controller, then you should know that there's a problem. And if you do it for 4 good years and you say that they are still determining my salary, that means there's a problem.
Very well.
And it's for you then to assist the system to see how all this came about. And if there should be any refund, you will refund. But don't get the impression that whoever is trying to investigate this is witch hunting you or that government is after you. If you do that, don't solve the problem. Because you are a top public officer. If it were an ordinary person that happened to him, all of us will be saying that the law should go after him.
Very well. We definitely, it's to be investigated. Honorable, we need to take a break. When we come back, I will go to Prof, and then we will carry on with this. You're watching New Day Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We're live on TV3. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. And we're streaming live around the world online at 3news.com. Also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We'll be going back to the panel to conclude our conversations on the allegations of some officials under the Eswal Dramani Mahama administration taking salaries as both MPs and ministers. We have our final panelist join us eventually. He is Dr. Kwabena Nyarko Otu. He is the chairman of the PIAC Sub Technical Committee. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Great. So I think I have to go to Prof now for your views on this alleged double dipping in the legislative bowl as well as the executive bowl. You pick here. Well, that's what it's being said. So what do you think? You were smiling all throughout when between, you know, Honorable Fuseni and Honorable Obi Amwa. Yes. What do you make of it?
Well, yes, I was smiling because I think the issue is so straightforward that we tend to be complicating it. Straightforward because we can all count something when it's two. It's two. So if the MP salary is, say, 13,000, if it's paid twice, it may be paid 26,000 thereabout. It's very obvious. You see, Einstein once said that it's not everything that counts can be counted. Not everything that counts can be counted, and everything that can be counted does not necessarily count. In this case, in these MPs, in this pay business, the pay counts and it can be counted. You remember recently when the MP were not paid on time. They were complaining that the weekend is coming, they had to go to their constituencies, and they have a lot of expenditure, which is true. The MPs have a lot of dependables, and people for school fees, this and that. So they count on their salaries very much, and they count it when they get their pay slip. So to say that they didn't count their money, they don't know that it's double, that is what it was amusing to me. That look, I think they counted the money. They know that the money is twice or more than what they're supposed to get. And then it was taken. Now, you may say it is not their fault. What also amuses me is the paymaster, the people who pay them, I'm sure they know the rules. Did they know that they're not supposed to be paid by the controller and then paid by parliament? What was happening? You see, it's very amusing. So it's not only the people who are collecting so-called. In fact, if this is true that these people are collecting double pay, it's very serious. If it's not true that they're not collecting double pay, it's also serious. Well. Because you are accusing people of collecting double pay where they're not. But if it's true they are collecting, that is serious matter, because the MP minister's pay is not the ordinary average man's pay. It's reasonable, relatively bigger. So for me, how come that they were paid 2 times, if it's true that they were paid 2 times? Who is doing the paying? Now, during the Mahama government, they talk about the Mahama government, but we know before the Mahama government, we have ministers which are also serving as what? As members of parliament. Was it happening during that time too? During the Rawlings government, there were people serving as mayors and MP at the same time. Were they paid double?
You want the investigation to go way back?
Way beyond that. Let's go back. What has been the practice? We, the ordinary people, we want to know. We all pay one salary. If you are paid double, we want to know. I also don't agree that if the guy is an MP and the minister is doing double work, no human being can do double work. You cannot be at 2 places at the same time. Either it's giving full-time work to the MP job, or full-time work to the minister job, or partially.
But a heavier workload.
Well, heavier workload, don't necessarily double. Remember when Honorable Obi was appointed, we were here, and we congratulated him. He made a joke that, well, this is double job, 1 pay. You recall?
I do.
Yes. So it's likely that our colleagues in Parliament, they know the rules. So what is not clear to me is, has this been going on way back, during the Rawlings government, during the Kufuor's government, during the Atami's government, the Mahama government, and the current government. If this has been going way back, what is the practice? So for me to say that we cannot count, we don't know the amount, I won't buy that. It's as clear as daylight that when you are paid 2 times, especially by 2 different agencies, you should be able to know. Now, are they paid by a paycheck? And you know, when you are paid by envelope, you count the money. Everybody count their pay. Even you are Donald Trump, you count your money. Say, this is the money I'm paid. Or they are paid by bank transfer. When the money hits your account,
you're going to buy it.
You know, in fact, I'm telling you, some of these people, even their wives knows that they are not paid more than they are paid. They must know, because their wife have budget for the house. So for me, this issue, that was very amusing. It's as clear as daylight that we can easily find out whether these people are paid twice, or pay 1.5 times, and who did the paying. That's my first point. My next point is, how did the case hit the CID? Is it a CID matter? This is an employer and employee matter. The employer paid the employee. Let's assume that they were paid double. The employer is government. Normally when this happens, the employer said a mistake has been made in paying you. Can you refund the money? When you refuse to refund the money, before you give it to law. Now, the CID is investigating these people, 18 people, 25 people. Did the employer check the matter themselves? Discover that they made a mistake? And then pursue these people to refund the money?
Yeah.
We want to know.
I think that's a very legitimate.
Yes, we want to know. Yeah. So I'm quite curious how the CID got into this. And who told the CID? Did the government present the case, say, hey, these guys I've been paying. I made a mistake, I've been paying double. Now, you know, call them, ask them to investigate. Investigate what?
They pay themselves, that's why.
Who paid themselves?
That's an allegation.
The employers paid themselves.
Paid themselves.
Yes, so I think so I want to know who referred the case to the CID.
And whether it wasn't premature.
Very good. CID just can't show up and want to investigate. Somebody might refer the case to them.
Right.
So you see, there are a lot of other issues surrounding the first. Has this been going on way back? We want to know. The employer, didn't you know that you are paying these people double? If you know, did you ask them to refund the money? If you didn't, we also had to hold you accountable.
Right.
Who gave the case to the CID? What exactly do you want the CID? In fact, the CID also confused. We are told that they submitted the 25 name. They told some people.
They've denied it.
They've denied that.
They've issued a statement. They've denied it.
They've denied it. See, the thing's becoming murkier and murkier. Yes. So for we, the ordinary citizens, this is the question we want to ask. Has this been going on way back? Let's open the whole book. The rules, let's know the rules. Are they supposed to be paid once or twice? If they be paid in the back, a long time ago, can we call all those people from the Rawlings government, Kufuor's government, Atame's government to come and refund that money? I think the first thing the employer must do to investigate the case and ask them for the money. If they fail to get the money, then they can make it a criminal case. The way they are going about it now, politicians will be thrown into it. By the end of the day, we will not get it. But these are big money. And also it's a money of ethics.
Sure.
We are ordinary people. We are all working. We get one pay. Why some people get 2 pays?
Right.
So for me, those are the issues that you must grapple with
very
and get to the bottom of
issues
it.
you've raised then. And yes. Dr. Kwabena Nyankwo here is with the PIAF, but also with the TUC. And this, yes, falls squarely within, labor, industrial relation issues. Prof is raising a very important point here that perhaps, well, he doesn't know the circumstances of how the matter got to the CID, but looking at it as it is with the facts as we have it, then perhaps that would have been a premature or we, moving ahead of ourselves. Whereas we could have resorted to, an employer-employee kind of relation, ask them to return the money. If they fail, then you can take up certain measures. Let me hear you on this.
Okay. First of all, let me apologize for being late. I came in from Cape Coast.
You were fashionably late.
Yeah, fashionably. I left Cape Coast 4 a.m., but the traffic along the route, yeah. I think my take on this is simple. We know in this country how we deal with such situations. If an ordinary worker had received double pay, how do we deal with it? But we also know that in this country, on certain matters, we tend to treat politicians differently from the others. Otherwise, this shouldn't have gotten to the political football game we're now observing. We just have to go back and see how we deal with certain things if they occur. And they do occur frequently among ordinary workers. So if there's evidence, like the Prof said, just write to the affected people. Ask them to refund the money. If they don't, before you proceed on some criminal tangent. But, I mean, the way we have done it, we have set it up for a political discussion, partisan political discussion, which in the end don't end anywhere for the citizens of this country. So I think we need to retrace our steps back and follow the procedure of handling such issues when they do occur.
Right, okay, thank you. I will go quickly to Honorable Obiamwa here again on this issue about how we've dealt with it. Perhaps we could have resorted to, you know, that kind of relationship thing before stepping out to the CID or the police. But also one thing I would want us to look at is, you raised the point about, okay, not you, but the Constitution, Article 71(3) or 71 and then 2, 71(1) and 2 talk about the committees that would have to be set up. And in Honorable Fuseni's explanation, he was talking about the fact that until it's determined by the committee, all that is taken are advances and all. Do you think that arrangement in itself is helping the situation? And at what point does the committee come in, so that if there is such a delayed, you know, or time elapses so much so that the committee is set up at a rather delayed stage, then reconciling how much has been advanced and everything becomes an issue?
Yeah, I agree that's an issue. Indeed, if you look at the committee report, I need to get the chair's name right, because we've had Chinuhese, we have Dubando. Yes, Professor Dubando. Professor Dora Francisca Dubando. That's the chair of the committee. So Dubando's committee report, if you look at it, the first recommendation that they made is that Parliament should pass an act to give details to the skeletal framework of Article 71 office holders, one of whose provisions should be that President should set up these committees within 6 months of assuming office to make the implementation of the committee recommendations prospective rather than retrospective.
Exactly.
So if we are able to follow this recommendation, it will address some of these issues. Because what happens is that it takes a long time for these committees to be formed, and then the committees in their recommendations will say that, for instance, in this particular committee's report, they are saying that there's some arrears which should be paid between 2013 and 2017. And it's even a huge burden on the national purse. Because if the government were to pay it bit by bit, it will not feel it than to wait for 4 years and say that this is how much you owe, pay to this category of public officers. Right. So if we look at that recommendation, it will help. But they've gone ahead to say that when it comes to MPs and ministers, MPs, once you are MP, let Parliament pay you. And once you're a minister, controller should top up, should add to what Parliament is paying you, so that it would then fit into your category.
So let me just ask this. So when you find yourself, like you, for instance, you're an MP and a minister, do you decide which salary you'd want to take, the MPs or the ministers? Or
ideally, it should not be an issue. You don't decide which salary you take.
Right.
The only thing you may decide is where you should be paid from.
But that isn't that determined by where you're drawing your salary from?
So for instance, somebody may have just come to Parliament, and then he will be asked to fill several forms for them to be put for that person to be put on the payroll. If the person opts that controller should be paying him, that means that even though he's an MP, then that option has come for controller to process everything. So it's controller who should be sending his salary into his bank account.
And that would be contrary to what this report is suggesting, right? Yeah.
But for sitting MPs like us, once we withdrawing from Parliament, there's no way I'm going to say that Parliament should stop.
And then controller pays you.
Controller pays me. What I expect is that Parliament should continue paying me. If there's any top up, then controller should make it up. And that's as simple as that. And that's how we should run the thing. But if you say that controller pays full, Parliament pays full because it's on account, then there's a problem.
Very well. Honorable Fuseni, your last word on this, and then we'll go back.
I really thank my panelists. Because I'm a person in this matter, I'm very circumspect.
Yes, exactly. You're right.
And that's why I have said I didn't use those words. I agree entirely with Dr. and Prof. that there is a practice in this country, in the public service, and so MPs and ministers are public servants. And so when we say there's discrimination and criminal targeting, It's because you have chosen to deal with a category of public officers differently. That's the problem. And what will motivate a person to do that? What will motivate a person to so I didn't want to go there and the argument will be, I just wanted to state the facts. Because you're in it. Yeah, because I'm on it. That.
Right. Yeah, very well. We appreciate that. So quickly, I think, quickly, yes, and then we go back to the PIAC.
The recommendation by the committee, I'm not sure, I don't have all the other reports, but I'm not sure this is the first time the recommendation has been made. So that's the first point. Secondly, you see, this report was presented in August 2016. They never did anything about it until about 9th of December, when the results are clear. And this is what has been the case. This has been the case all this while.
Right.
So even when the reports are submitted, the politicians don't do anything until they know their faith.
Well, we will see, but indeed it's a very important recommendation there that if we see it, you know, being implemented, I think it would help with a lot of issues. Exactly. Let's not create the environment for certain things to happen, because human beings would want to have their liberties anytime and have their So let's just try to restrict the environment or the circumstances for that. But as I mentioned earlier, we had to put the conversation on the PIAC findings on hold for some time. We are returning to it now because we have the chairman of the PIAC SAP Technical Committee with us, Dr. Kwabena Nyakoto, and he's made his initial comments on this, the matter we're discussing when he joined us, the double payments. But we'll go back to the PIAC conversations and then we'll have his perspectives on that. Perhaps give us some understanding as to what PIAC intends to do moving forward. I know in your report, Doc, you talked about the fact that you don't have the prosecutorial powers and all of that. I hope you're not going to propose that you should be given prosecutorial powers, because we have this coming up quite often. And yes, exactly. Exactly.
They want to prosecute.
Yeah, so we're looking at and again we could look at the feasibility of that and the utility of that, really, because if you have a number of committees or agencies being given the prosecutorial powers, definitely there are repercussions of that. And then exactly, yes. But on a serious note, Doc, this report, quite some startling revelations coming out from that project being non-existent in certain areas, others being shortly done and all. The other panelists have had their piece on this, but let me hear from you, or tell us, coming from PIAC, what went into this and how is it looking?
Okay. I mean, what we did simply is to say that in the past, we get information from the ministries as to how much has been allocated to them and how they have spent them. And then at the end of the year, we go back to them and they also give us reports. So it was kind of the same institutions we are supposed to be checking are the very ones that are also telling you what they have used.
So you didn't have the first-hand
exactly. So what we decided going forward then was to say that we would take the inspection forward by going directly to inspect the project. Now, project inspections has many components. For instance, we want to determine value for money. You will go, the school block has been completed, but is it really worth the amount that has been spent on it? We do not really have the capacity in those areas. So our first step was to say that let's look at whether the project is there in the first place and look at a few features of the project.
So you have a number of boxes you're checking as you go.
Exactly, as you go. Okay. So what we have been doing is to constitute ourselves into groups. So I think in the last one I went, there was a group in the Volta region, there was another group in Ashanti region, and I was in the Ashanti region. So I think you have seen the road, Anyinasu, Sechidumasi. I was on that road myself, okay. So in some of these things, we go and see that, okay, the road has been constructed. We look at the initial costs and what finally we paid. And it's because probably there were delays, and so it leads to cost overruns. We also go to places and you find that the school block has been done, but already within a year or two, there are serious cracks, which poses a danger to even the pupils. Right. Then you go to some places and the project is not there at all. So it's quite serious. And it's quite serious in the sense that, I mean, if you, between 2011 and 2016, this country made about $3.4 billion from oil. In fact, it's more than, that's what came to Ghana. But you also said that it's only 18% of the entire oil money. The 82% or so went to the mining, the oil companies. But, I mean, Honorable Fuseni will agree that when we were looking for the 3 billion Chinese loan, we had fantastic ideas of what we would do with a 3 billion Chinese loan. It didn't come, or all of it didn't come.
All of it, yeah, didn't come.
But in lieu of that, we still managed to have $3.4 billion in 6 years from oil. And we also made conscious effort with a specific law to regulate the way we use the money.
Right.
Which means that we thought that the money could be helpful. And we distributed this money across sectors. But eventually, what we found basically is that we've not efficiently utilized the resources the way it ought to be. So that's why probably people still continue to say that they are not feeling the impact of the oil resources.
And especially when such findings come out, then it goes to reinforce their beliefs and thinking.
Exactly. And I mean, PIAC is a unique creature. I've heard about the political connotations and all that. I'm from the TUC. There are people from other professional bodies.
It's supposed to be civil society.
It's entirely civil society. And we have made a very conscious effort to depoliticize our work. Because we all know how things turn in this country when it's politicized. Yeah. So the report we did, and we are also aware that coming out with a report like this, it's a serious indictment, it's a serious issue, and you don't just throw anything into the fray. So we actually made inspections. I slept in Kumasi, and then we'll be traveling to all the other parts. The most other serious issue about this report also is that, you see, we expect the communities to follow up on some of these things, but in some, or in most instances, they are not even aware. Not just the communities. In fact, the district assemblies don't know that this project being constructed here is from oil money.
Right.
They don't know at all. And in some instances, I think in Kojoban Redu's place, Asante Achim. I actually made a presentation at Asante Achim. There was one road project where it became a heated debate amongst the people. Actually, the information is that the road had been constructed even by Kojoban Redu even before he died. But we still now have a situation where we say that it's oil money that was used in constructing the road. Meanwhile, Kojoban Redu died before we had oil, or before we started producing oil. Yeah. So going forward, we expect the communities to be involved in identifying projects that are of importance to them.
Right.
And then we also give them sufficient information to be able to monitor the progress of work on those projects.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And one other area I want us to look at is the 12 priority areas, because at the end of the day, you would want to see certain, progress in these priority areas. And one thing that strikes me from your report is the priority area looking at capacity building. And this capacity building here has to do with capacity building of Ghanaians in oil and gas. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I think it is. And your report, the PIAC report, is saying that for 2 consecutive terms, from 2011 to 2016, there has been a focus on capacity building in oil and gas. But the people you engaged are of the view that allocations to this priority area have not necessarily been utilized in a way that has been beneficial to, ensuring that we realize the objective. And for me, this is key because we consistently talk about local content in this whole petroleum industry, and the fact that we need to build capacities because we cannot depend on the foreign companies all the time, or the foreign, people coming in from outside to do that, because you need local people there. So if for 2 consecutive terms, we've pumped money into such a critical area, but we seem not to have, gained or benefited the way we expected, then that's quite worrying, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, if you look at the allocation to the capacity building, in some of the years, it's actually more than allocation to agriculture, which is also supposed to be a priority for this country. And the question you ask at the end of when the money is spent is whose capacity has been built.
Right.
There were some allocations to KNUST to train people in oil and gas. But of course, when you talk to the people, and our mandate requires us to do this
Engage
public
them,
forum,
right.
the view is that we are not getting value for spending this huge amount of money on capacity building.
Right.
But also, I think for those of you in the media, some critical focus on some of these issues is important. And some of the information, you can even get it from the budget. One thing we have realized is that if you take, for instance, agriculture, as we pump oil money in there, the original budget for agriculture actually continues to shrink. But oil money is supposed to have been an addition.
Right.
Yeah. In actual fact, in total allocation to agriculture have even shrunk, even as we send more money from oil and gas.
Right.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you check the 2012 budget, there was an allocation of about 60 million or so to the Office of the President for infrastructure development from the oil money. And then you ask yourself, so where did the other ministries that are focused on infrastructure, where are they?
Right.
And what kind of infrastructure does the Office of the President provide? Okay. But again, when you come to the capacity building, it's become too nebulous a term that allows for all kinds of expenditures to be shoveled there as capacity building.
Because I'm reading a report here, I mean, it's an extract of it, which says, I'm quoting, that additionally, the priority area under capacity building was used to support almost everything under education, replacing the statutory responsibilities of GET Fund and to support the Musicians Union of Ghana, Musica.
Exactly.
So.
Okay. So has somebody asked what Musica used that
Right.
1 million or so Ghana cedis allocate? What did they use it for? Whose capacity did they build?
Musical capacity.
Okay. And really, what has that got to do with capacity in oil and gas that will enable Ghanaians to be able to participate effectively in the industry called oil and gas?
Right. Quickly, let me go to Honorable Fuseni here. The capacity building issue, is it a case that it's gradually losing the focus that we intended to have it, which is capacity building in oil and gas and capacity building of Ghanaians? Now that we're seeing that it's everything under education is coming under that, as well as the allocations to Musicians Union of Ghana, for instance.
Well, thank you so very much. Like I said earlier, I think that basically when we discovered oil, we thought that we were very conscious of the Dutch disease. We said we were learning from Nigeria, we learned from Norway and other areas. And so that was why we put in all these systems to work to ensure that we got value. I mean, we always know that if you don't build the capacity of the indigents, they are not able to participate effectively in the oil industry, downstream, midstream, and upstream. And so that was why the decision was taken to build the capacity of those. I'm aware that the university, particularly University of Science and Technology, some polytechnics were allocated resources to build the capacity of people who will go and join the oil industry. But the oil industry is quite technical, okay, and the skills that are required presently appear to be skills that are coming from outside. Exactly. I remember when we were the Minister of Energy, we wanted welders. It was quite difficult to get welders because the kind of welding that is done in Ghana cannot be applied to oil in the welding in the gas and oil and gas industry. So clearly, and that was what we were thinking of. That look, if you want Ghanaians to participate, you must build their capacity. And I agree entirely with you. You see, when you talk about, and I said it earlier, you see, when you go to an area and they say, well, we don't know that the school is built by oil money. It's precisely they wouldn't know. Because your annual budget funding amount, when it gets into the budget, it's no longer designated as annual budget funding amount. It's designated as budgets, funds from the budget. And so it goes to the ministry as funds of the budget. So the commingling becomes the problem. But so let's see, as PEAC, what do we do to separate? And I know that when we're discussing the act, people made strenuous efforts to say that, look, why don't we create a dedicated area? And that led us to the priority areas. And say that for the number of years that we are going to exploit our oil, we are going to channel the resources into this particular area and ensure that when finally we exhaust this final product, we will be able to point directly to something that has been gotten out of our oil. Right. But the commingling clearly is a big problem. And that is what is happening. So yes, oil and the training might be losing its focus because in the first place, you are training people and jobs are not really there.
That's correct.
So what are you training them for? Two, it requires a lot of capital to partake. The 15% that we have reserved for Ghanaian participation, ask me who are those Ghanaians who are participating, getting the 15%. Okay? So yes, these are areas that require critical looking at and critical thinking to tweak the way we take the benefits out of the oil and gas industry to benefit Ghanaians.
Very well, cool. Still on the priority areas, Professor Jidonu, there are those, indeed, the PIAC report says it to some extent about the fact that perhaps we are spreading ourselves thin when it comes to these areas, so that we are not seeing the impact in certain areas that we focus on. Because like I said earlier, there are certain priority areas, 12 of them, but for each given period of time, you're looking at a maximum of 4, I believe, so that others are suggesting that why don't we perhaps reduce it to maybe 2 or 1, and then we would feel the impact. Because as Dr. Nyakotu mentioned here, that funds that are committed to, say, agriculture from the ABFA, whilst that increases, government in general allocations are decreasing, so you don't really see the impact, in the agricultural sector.
Yes.
Whereas perhaps if you focus on fewer areas than the 4, then you may perhaps be having greater impact.
Well, not necessarily. You see, all we are talking about is the input. You see, there's an input, there's a process, there's an output. Okay? The output, the process and the output part is the impact and the monetary aspect of the whole thing. It's not clear to us now, PIAC report alluded to that, whether we're actually monitoring the impact of these implementations. For example, if you use $2 of oil money here, what impact did it actually do? If you use $10 of oil money here to train capacity, okay, what impact? You train a number of people. Are those people engaged in the oil industry? If they're not engaged in the oil industry because there's no job in the oil industry, do you continue to train them? For me, like all other projects, is the monitoring and the impact analysis, which is the issue. So we can reduce the priority areas if you want, but if at the end of the day we don't continue to go do the next stage to actually monitor the impact, that's the point. When you ask people what impact had the oil done to your life or economy, they don't have answers for you. Okay, everything you say, well, we were here when the oil came, we are still here with the oil, we don't know exactly what is going on. You see, so if you don't really isolate the oil impact, you actually monitor it, document its impact, it doesn't matter what priority you are choosing. In fact, in our environment here, everything is a priority. When some little money come through, we try to spread it all over the place. And the little money we spread all over the place, we don't monitor the implementation and the impact of the implementation. Probably we don't want to do that, or probably we think it's not important. You see, the oil money is a targeted money. As I say, it's a windfall. We don't used to have it. Is it 3.4 billion? That's a lot of money. And if you go and borrow that money on the international market, they charge you a lot of interest. You will pay, your grandchildren will pay, your great-grandchildren will pay the interest. This money coming from our resources, is it 82% taken by the oil companies? It's a lot of money they're taking away. They left 3.4 billion. At the end of the day, we must, only 3.4 billion. They took most of it away. The type of capacity we are talking about is that in the future, we will actually do the exploration.
Industry,
Who said that foreigners will always continue to explore? I know it's capital intensive. Okay? So they're making it in such a way that we will never explore, so that we continue to give them the 82%. The little that we got, we implement it, we use it, but at the end of the day, we don't know the impact. For me, moving on, the PIAC report goes beyond the oil issue.
Definitely.
All other projects, do we get the citizens involved? Do we call for proposal? Okay, what needs do you have in the area? Tell us. We will try to consolidate it and move some money there. So for me, I'm very keen that the PIAC report will go beyond just the oil industry. We try to monitor the impact. Going on from here, I hope in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years,
We don't come back here and debate whether the oil is making an impact. But so far, I don't really see it. Unless, Doc, you think it's making an impact?
I think, you see, if you take the honorable
yes,
if you take the priority areas,
yes,
in actual fact, the law says that in the absence of a long-term development plan,
yeah.
So we should have a long-term.
Yes,
plan.
we have a lot of
development plans.
Yeah. But even if you select the 4 areas and say infrastructure, everybody in this country today agrees, for instance, that we need railways.
Yeah.
So if you say all the money is for infrastructure, we are targeting it on railways. Everybody will see the impact. That after the 6 years that we've had oil, we have
the railways start running.
Yeah.
And we can say that we use our oil.
If you then decide to spread this so thinly, so in that sense also, it's not so much about the commingling. Because you see, the law is clear.
But that's what you just said. So fine, we know that. And as a former Minister of Roads, I can tell you that railways are very critical and beneficial. They elongate the lifespan or prolong the lifespan of our roads. Now, and they make transportation cheaper.
Right.
Okay? So if we say that for our oil resources, let's target, then you don't commingle.
So then it's directed. It's easy
that
to.
One I will agree to.
It's easy
let's
to
target.
to monitor and target.
Has been clear on that.
Right, sure. Honorable Obioma, your concluding remarks on this. We'll work for a break.
Well, as our good friend here said, it's a very critical report. If we've received over $3 billion from oil, the oil revenue, and we don't seem to be able to show the average person that the oil has come to change our lives, and they will say that what's the benefit of the oil? Sure. We should be careful we don't go the way other countries have gone, where they don't see the benefits of it, and then they don't even see the oil fields as their assets. They rather see it as a place that they should also go for their portion in some other countries, and to be very difficult for us. That is why I expect SPIAC beyond this to even popularize this report, get the media involved, for all of us to be engaged in discussing this report and looking at the way forward, and then sending a signal to the present government that we should be careful we don't go this way, because if we are going to let the whole world know that we have not spent our money well, or we could have spent it better, then this should be a signal to us that going forward we should collaborate more with PIAC to avoid some of these things.
That's true. Very well. On that note, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're looking at the developments coming out of Ghana's participation in the 2018 Commonwealth Games in Australia. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're live online around the world at 3news.com, and also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We'll be moving on next to look at the new developments surrounding the our participation in the 2018 Commonwealth Games. Last week we were here, we looked at the issue as it broke that week, and this week, following that news, we have information that the Deputy Minister of Sports has been suspended, along with the Acting Director of the National Sports Authority. And we'll be looking into that now. Start us off, Dr. Kwame Nyakoto, here on this, the decision to suspend the two. We obviously coming against the backdrop of what has happened, a step in the right direction, but others are saying perhaps it's not a complete one in view of the fact that the substantive minister is still at post. Do you agree with that?
I have very limited information on the processes. But of course, it's a step in the right direction. And those of us who are campaigning on anti-corruption platform will see it as a step in the right direction. But it shouldn't end there. We should get to the bottom of the matter. But the more serious issue also has to do with the fact that why is everybody trying to get out of this country?
I think you know the answer.
I think there was a survey by the one.
Oh yes, Pew.
That says that about 75% of the people want to leave, and sometimes people put pressure on those in positions to help them, and they use some of these
tournaments as
tournaments. In fact, conferences. Yeah, this week I was at the German embassy, and I was telling somebody, like, looking at the way the person who interviewed me, the way he looked at me. I was going for a conference, and because people use those conferences as an opportunity to get out of town, the way the person was looking at me, but for the fact that I have been a regular.
You didn't tell them you're on PIAC?
I'm sure.
You didn't?
I'm sure that he might not have given that.
Right.
Yeah. And it's this whole psyche that people think they have no opportunities here. They must get out at all cost, including, journalists who are on TV and we regard them as celebrities.
People posing as journalists.
And we regard them as celebrities down here. So these are the fundamental issues that we must address. But two things. It's a step in the right direction. That step, you should take it a bit further and get to the bottom of the issues. And then also make sure that those found culpable are properly dealt with to serve as deterrent to others.
Right.
The second is to address the fundamental issues that makes people think that there's no opportunity here for them. And then they pile on pressure on honorable men and women to do whatever it takes to get them out of the town.
I mean, the issue as to why people want to move out of this country, I think we had an extensive discussion on that some time ago, and Prof, made some beautiful statements, which, has stuck with me, that there are push and pull factors, and at any given time, those two factors are operating. So you need to look at those, two hand in hand and try to see. But, of course, this issue coming up presents the opportunity for us to look into that. But for purposes of this conversation, we will be looking specifically at this matter as it plays out with the ministers or the the appointees involved. Because oftentimes these things happen, commissions of inquiries or whatever it is are set up, we look into them and all of that. So now there's this divided opinion. Should we go the commission of inquiry way or stick with the process as initiated, which is getting the CID involved? Because some people have raised the issue, why is the CID or the police coming into this? And I believe, for me, not that my opinion matters, but going this way, I think it's honorable to take us on that. And then
the first place, I will commend the president for this. And my understanding is that he has a preliminary report from National Security. And then based on the report, he thought that some of these officers, the deputy minister, acting chief executive, should step aside, and then which is even affected the GOC and then even the board chairman of the sports authority. If they get exonerated, so be it. But based on his initial report, he felt this is the way forward. I've been in that ministry. I was in that ministry for 4 good years, so I know how these things are run. All Africa Games, Cup of Nations, World Cup, Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games. I was part of all this. And to hear that people had been deported because they posed as journalists was a bit worrying. Worrying in the sense that it appeared that was the easiest route to obtain a visa. That you get accreditation. Once you get accreditation, you get somehow automatic visa. But when they were entering, other issues came up and they had to be sent back. And some of them who came were arrested by National Security. And based on that, we've managed to get a lot of information which would help in addressing this thing. And sometimes you wonder why people don't learn from these things. Because I heard on somebody saying that I had to pay a certain amount, equivalent of 300 million cedis to be able to get access to this. And now that they've brought me back, I'm going to demand my money, all those things. It's early days yet, but we've heard enough. Or if what we've heard is what really went on. It's scandalous,
right,
and bizarre. And I think the law should take its course. That's what we will say. If investigations are conducted and people are culpable, they should face the music. That's the only way. I remember when I was there were even accusations against me, but I was so forthright that I was ready to face my accusers. There was one lawyer who had his own problems with me because he was involved in those things. He would organize supporters and look for visa for these supporters. When I visited him, he threw in that I was charging fees for visa. I took him on and even said that we are both lawyers. Let's go to General Legal Counsel. Yes, let's report ourselves and prove whether I've even picked a CD from anybody. He ran away. Eventually, the police was looking for him. He absconded and settled in another country. That's how serious the matter is. We get intellectuals who will be leading some of these things. They form groups, and so we can take you on this trip and then try to secure visas for them. People came with receipts to show that they had paid money to this individual. Wow. And so it's not a new thing, but if we don't crack their whip, if we don't make people pay for it, then people think that they are smarter.
Because there's no deterrent in the system, and so people can do.
The level of name and shaming is not even enough.
It's not.
It's not. Commission of inquiry, you appear before it, the whole world is looking at you, but what are the sanctions?
Right.
Beyond that, if the report has come out, the white paper comes out, and there's some form of exoneration, and the whole thing starts again.
Right. So I think that's really the CID where the police way for me is the way to go. But clearly, there's another side or another dimension that I want us to look at, which has to do with sports in general in the country, and the fact that perhaps, I mean, oftentimes we say that aside football, it seems we don't even pay particular attention to other disciplines. And then when you look at how we are willing to spend money on sending large groups of people over there, most times they outnumber the athletes themselves, raising questions about how committed we are to
That's why it wasn't spending money. These were individuals who were
that's true.
Paying money to be able to go.
Yes, but this has come up, and so we are looking at the bigger questions here, because I'm looking at this as a problem that would affect the sports industry in general. I mean, people have talked about the fact that we are having challenges with sponsorship of sporting activities in Ghana. Such scandals will make it even more difficult for us to get sponsorship to certain, for certain disciplines which are struggling in the sports industry. Prof, your perspectives on that?
Well, this is as Honorable Obi said, this has been going on for a long, long time, and beyond it, it will continue. Okay. In fact, people might already be planning for Russia already. I don't know whether a lot of people would like to go to Russia. Probably Russia is not very attractive for the World Cup. Probably, in fact, where to settle there. I mean, people, even the athletes are saying if they are not paid, they're not coming back. I was wondering, where are they going to stay?
Some have absconded.
Yes.
1/3 of their team
have absconded. So, the people, the countries who organize these games know us. They know us already. They know us that some of the people who come with our group are not genuine people. The Australians start to clamp down on this now. The Russians will look into it. The next World Cup after Russia, if it happens in North America, a lot of people will kill.
The next World Cup is Qatar.
Very good. Yes. A lot of people will kill. But I wonder what a deputy minister or a minister can do about this. This thing happened underground. Probably below the operational level. How can the minister know? A minister or the deputy mayor will be crazy to be actually involved in this himself or herself. So for me, I don't know the suspension, when they even investigate it, they find out that the minister is culpable or not culpable. I don't know how that can literally...
In fact, he only just...
Yes.
You were even asking why the deputy, not the minister himself.
Yes.
It's because the deputy was the chairman of the International Games Committee.
Okay.
So he was directly responsible.
Very good. Yeah. So
but others argue that ultimately the buck stops with the minister.
Of ultimate responsibility.
Yes,
exactly.
It's the minister. Yes, I accept that. But the point is that, first, I think the president must be commended for taking this action. And it is not the first minister he suspended, is that correct?
Well,
Is it
no,
the first
the
one?
Upper West Regional Minister.
Upper West, is he back?
That's a
And
good
also
question.
the Minister for
Not yet.
Agri.
He's not back.
No, Agric resigned.
He resigned. The Upper West guy is still under suspension. Is that correct? I think this is the first time in our history that we'll be suspending ministers.
Yes.
Have we suspended ministers before?
I'm not aware of that.
Yes. So the president seems to like
sacked.
this approach of suspending ministers. We are not yet. We don't yet know whether after the case the minister will be recalled.
Yeah.
Now, if the minister will not recalled, that's a big dent to his reputation. Okay, suspending a minister or deputy minister is a big deal. I don't know why the president took this high risk approach, but he had to be commended for it, for this bravery. But I think after this is all done, I think this process is going to go on. Our people always want to travel outside. They found these sports as a means. They're not only sports people, as a means of going out. I bet you, as you see now, some people are playing for Russia. They are playing for, in fact, they know about all the games than anybody else. Now, the people who want their money back, well, I think they have a case to want their money back. Probably they will even assist. No, they will even assist in the investigation.
Yes.
They will assist. Who collected the money from you?
Prosecution witnesses.
Was he dodging an illegal act?
Illegal act. You see, so it's quite simple.
If you are an imposter, you pose as a journalist.
Yes.
And you cannot even string one sentence together.
But
And
I'm
then
not too sure. I'm not too sure those people would describe themselves as journalists. Those who took the money will give them the designation.
Yes, so at that point you accept, yes, that you are going as a journalist.
And when he was asked that, when he arrived, yes, he accepted.
Yes,
when he was interviewing in Australia, he said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm a journalist." No, they've given him this.
So didn't the embassy also realize anything that?
Well, I mean, let's not go into the embassy because they have their own discretion to do things.
It's accreditation.
See, probably they also have a role. They should have done some harder work.
Some due diligence.
But that's,
Yes.
yeah,
No, let me explain the
we are
process.
looking at our
Let me explain
issues
the
here.
process.
Just a minute,
Accreditation.
yes.
As a media person.
Just a minute, Honorable, I'll come to you. Just a minute, I'll come to you.
As a media person, they file that I'm a media person, I want to cover the games. They're able to secure accreditation. And once you get the accreditation, you get automatic visa.
Right.
That's
So that's what it
happens.
is. So the
So when
embassy
he comes as an imposter and he says I'm a journalist and he's able to go through, then he will get a visa.
So the embassy is believing that
Yes.
these people haven't been accredited
Accredited.
as so much. So what
Yes.
is happening now is we are losing that credibility.
Yes.
Which is very
How were they
problematic.
accredited?
That is
Yes.
that's exactly what I was coming.
Yes.
Who was speaking? Was it Prof?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Prof.
No,
Carry on.
I can go. I can come back. Yes.
Yeah, you
Yes.
see, everything works on presumption. There's officialdom involved. Ghana is participating in the Commonwealth Games. It's precisely because Ghana is part of the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Now, officialdom then introduces people to the host country that they are requesting for visas for them as accredited journalists. They are entitled to presume that what they have telling them
It's
is
the right
right.
thing. Exactly.
You see,
Regular.
but they get there, they get the visas, and you are told when you apply for visa that doesn't give you automatic entry into the country. So they get there, and they present the visas, permits for entry into the country. They are described as journalists. Then the receiving country or host country does not see anything, the accoutrements of journalism with these people. Don't see them with cameras. Don't see them with things that the journalists must have.
Typically would have, yeah.
Didn't they have phones?
Okay.
Not even laptop.
Not even laptop. Okay. And so then it raises suspicion.
Right.
Then it rebuts that presumption that,
Very,
well,
very
these
good.
people were journalists and they were so accredited. That is why the president's action is good.
Yeah.
So who accredited them? Who sent the information? Because as chairman of the international planning, you have to sign for them to take visas.
Okay.
What due diligence did you do
into it,
before you forwarded the letters to the embassy for visas, or High Commission in this case for visas? So immediately there's a presumption that either you were complicit in this matter or you were negligent.
Either way.
Okay, either way.
Yeah.
And that's why we commend the president. But we have to go further. Because yes, like you were saying, I applied, I'm a member of the EU APC Joint Parliamentary Assembly. So when you talk about EPA, I'm really situated in it.
Okay.
Now I applied to go to Belgium to attend the parliamentary session. I was given only 6 days. 6 days.
With your diplomatic passport.
Yes, 6 days to go and come. You see, so it's eating away. These things are eating away our credibility.
Totally.
Okay?
Totally.
And that is why we must look at it seriously. It has become an embarrassment reported everywhere. If it were the journalists who had absconded, we'll say probably they are absconding for their own reasons because we sponsored them, paid their tickets, and are looking after them. But you raise an important, you know, the cyclists when they went there, they weren't appealing for support.
But they had been given equipment here.
They said the equipment were old-fashioned.
No, it's not true.
The tires were not good.
It's not true.
Well, the equipment was... So they wanted again.
But that wouldn't be the first time we've had such
things.
And that was why I was raising the point.
But sports is sports. In fact, it's the intangible assets of a nation. That today, when you get somewhere and mention Abedi Pele, people immediately remember, oh, so you... Or you say you're a Ghanaian, say, oh, Abedi Pele. Because it's an intangible asset. That's what sports does to a nation. That's why we should develop sports. And sports is also an empowering tool. It can change. It can change the lives of people and the communities. Okay, and so we should look at all sports, not only football. I mean, somehow we've tended to concentrate on football. Initially, in the Winter Games, Ghanaians even participated in some winter sports. That was good, even though we don't have it here. But that was we don't have snow here, but that was good. As the Sports Council should look at the possibility of extending the participation and involvement of lesser known sports in the arena so that we can train people. I mean, we're talking about Ghana Beyond Aid. That could be Ghana Beyond Aid.
Definitely.
Because we are all endowed with different talents. And that could be competitive enough for us to get us. But what the president has done is good, must not stop there. We want to know which people were behind this embarrassment. Huge embarrassment to the country. How did they partake in the, or participate in this camp? And what motivated them to participate in this camp? We want to know.
Very well, Prof.
What motivated them? We know what.
It goes without saying. It goes without saying, yes.
Yes. Well, we know. I mean, this thing has been going for a long time. Now, you say reputation. Our reputation is already dented already.
Totally. It's
for years, they know. Like I say, all host countries put out a red flag on some countries. They are bringing their supporters, check them out. They are bringing journalists, check them out. You think the Australian by accident discovered this system? No, they were red flagged. Ghana is sending sister journalists first. Sister journalists, how many athletes are they sending? How many athletes are they sending to this game? How many goals are they coming to win here?
And how many of the activities or games are we participating in to warrant that number of journalists?
If you want to do Kululu, do sensible Kululu. It's quite obvious that they'll find out that sister against the athletes, it doesn't make sense. So they've already red flagged this before they arrive. Before they arrive, they've checked them out. So already, the future games they're going to have, they've already reflected what those Ghanaians, what those Cameroonians. Either they come as proper athletes and then abscond, or some people show up, they are journalists, they're not journalists. Check them out. They want visa to reside in our country. So I think our reputation is already gone. But let's see how best we can go through this exercise and see whether in the future, probably the best thing in the world, we want to develop this economy, people will still be going, as a matter of fact.
That's fine.
Yes.
Quickly, then we go for a break.
I get the point that if we need to be a little bit smart sometimes, because it doesn't really make sense. Sister journalists. But I remember we sent people football game supposed to be for the deaf and the dumb. And we send people who were not. That's official dishonesty on our part.
On that note, we need to take a break, please. I need to have a good laugh, so we need to take a break. We'll see you shortly. This is New Day Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com. Also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We'll be moving on to the last topic for today, which is the Bank of Ghana's directive to banks to increase their minimum paid up capital from 120 million Ghana cedis to 400 million Ghana cedis. Now, this directive was actually issued in September 2017. And the banks were given the deadline of December 31st, 2018. Now, the deadline is fast approaching, and banks that are struggling to meet this deadline are forming alliances, as it were, to petition the president. This week, they met the president, put in their petition, which is essentially seeking the president's intervention for an extension of the deadline. They are proposing a deadline of 2022, by which time they would have met the 400 million Ghana cedis. Of course, the Bank of Ghana is not in support of that. We'll be looking at that. Honorable Fuseni, if you could start us off with this one. Since 2017, September, this issue or this notice was put out. And we're told by the Bank of Ghana that at least about some 5 of the banks have already met this, which perhaps is good news, but the masses, according to the coalition, are struggling to meet this.
Where are the masses? So other banks? No, they are not masses.
The other banks, compared to those who have met it, compared to those who have met the deadline.
These are financial institutions operating on real market principles, and so they are not masses. You see, we might get serious in this country. You set up a business of banking. You allow people and encourage people to deposit their money with you, either through savings or fixed-term deposits. Now, you go into you use their money to enter into other transactions. And then, this is their money. They can ask for their money at any time. The regulator is saying that in order not to create fear and panic in the system, after we've seen 3 banks collapse.
It's two banks
collapse. And one into a management arrangement. Banks must post 400 million as a capital adequacy, a ratio. Right. So that when you look at the equity they are holding and the risk that they are engaged in, this should net up to 400. So that at any time that people need their monies, they can go for their monies. Okay? I think it's good. I also think that it introduces some level of discipline in the system. If we are to develop as a country, we must be a disciplined group of people. If you cannot get the 400, it doesn't mean that you should stand on your own. You still can be making the business. You still can be involved in the business of banking. But you must get into an arrangement with other banks so that you can pool your resources together, network, pool your energies, and still be in the business. But I think that the Bank of Ghana should stick to their guts and say 400 is 400. As a regulator, they think that that is what will engender confidence in the banking sector of this country, and that must be so. Very
well, Prof. The banks, the association who petitioned the president, are saying that it's difficult for them to meet this, and they are proposing a certain plan to 2022. Obviously, this is not going down well with the Bank of Ghana, and the options, as Honorable Fuseni has put up, perhaps is to go into a merger situation with others. But with the issue of merger comes issues about, and I'm sure Dr. Nyakutu will be interested in this, with the issue of redundancies, labor issues, disgruntled employees bringing suits against these people and all of that. So yes, there's that option, but is it really?
Yes. This directive was issued 2017 September. We're almost halfway through. We are less than about 6 months to Christmas. I think we are walking on a landmine as a country, or we are sleepwalking into a disaster if you're not very careful. The fact that these indigenous banks raise this issue that we cannot make it. In other words, won't pay, can't pay, won't pay. We cannot make it. That alone can create uncertainty in the system. We, the ordinary people, are sitting down. Who are those banks which I say can't do it? We may start going to them to collect our money.
The uncertainty that the Bank of Ghana want to avoid could be brought into the back door if we are not careful. So we are sleepwalking into a disaster if we don't manage this very well. Now, that's the first point. The second point, yes, Honorable Fuseni has a point. But what I want to ask is, how did they come by this 400 million, this thing, from 120 million Ghana cedis to 400 million Ghana cedis as the capitalization requirement? They might have done some feasibility study, I presume. The Bank of Ghana is a big organization. They didn't just woke up today and come up this morning.
Some figures I have here in 2008,
yes.
60 million Ghana cedis, and then in 2012 it was doubled to 120.
Then it's now double, almost double again.
Yeah,
but the economy itself is not moving that level.
It's more than double.
The economy is not moving at the same rate. In terms of what? GDP. GDP is GDP. GDP is not necessarily cash. You could have done some couple of things. You must be careful of GDP. Okay, the economy in terms of we the people saving the money. Now, if you wanted to mobilize this 400 million, where are they going to mobilize it from? For the domestic market? Our money?
Come together. That's the measures.
I will come to the measure later on. Where the Bank of Ghana wanted individually to raise 400 million Ghana cedis. It's not a lot of money on international market. This is just about $90 million. Not a lot of money when you talk about bank. I mean, some people also will be laughing. Hey, these guys are complaining about 90 million. Which kind of banks are these? But 90 million translated into about 400 million is a lot of money for this bank. Now, the question you could ask is, how did they come by this money? Was this really thought through? Was feasibility work done? Can the economy actually sustain this? Can they derive this money from the economy? I'm not sure. If they have done all that and they say that the money they came up with is realistic and this indigenous bank cannot meet it, well, that's a good case for them to close down or to merge. On merger, if they want to merge, it's too late. We are talking about merger of banks. They are not savings and loan or susu clubs. To merge banks, go through a lot of process. The TUC man is here. There are labor issues. There are asset issues. We are 6 months, almost 6 months to the end of the expiring time. Okay, so I really don't think that even the proposal by the Council of State is realistic. We have already let the cat out of the bag.
Some have actually questioned the necessity or the utility of that whole petition, that the regulator has, come out with a certain directive.
Yes.
The president's coming into it, or the executive coming into it, perhaps is even going to undermine the independence of the regulator.
That is even more messy. We are told that the vice president is against extension of the time. Is that correct? Is that true?
That's what we are reading.
That's what we reported. The vice president and the governor, of course, the governor don't want to extend. The vice president. But the president went ahead and set up a committee, which means that you want to give it some thought. That is also...
He wants to be advised.
Well, you see, some of these things, you see, is part of creating uncertainty. If the president said, no, 2018 December is a deadline, is 400 million, or you're out, then it creates some certainty. We know who are going to be in, which are going to be out. The president probably...
Or redirect them to the regulator to deal with them.
To deal with, but he's going to set up a committee, which means that the president say, I will give it a thought. I want some people to advise me. Okay? Which gives some hope to these ingenious banks that the president of Ghana is listening to them.
But there's nothing wrong with him.
Nothing wrong. No, you might be careful.
This is our money.
No, you might be careful. You might be careful. You are bringing uncertainties. You see, if the time they made the president said, hey, you guys, this is the bank matter. I'm not a bank man. I've given a directive. They have come up with a decision. Try your best. Find out this thing. Anyway, you can ask this indigenous, do you have a plan B? Yeah, you should ask them. Do you have a plan B? Is a plan B the measure? If you ask this bank who have not started preparing for measure, okay, we are now in April. You say you must merge before this thing. I don't think that's possible. So the banks must have a plan B. But yes, the president might have taken a good decision, but I think it also creates the uncertainty. But what I'm saying is that if you're not careful...
They do have a plan B, which is to pay up by 2022.
Which one? Oh, no, that's not a plan. That's not a plan B. Plan B within the content of this
2018.
Yes, that's not a plan B. That's another plan altogether. Yeah. That's not a plan B. But I'm saying that if we're not careful, we are sleepwalking into a serious banking crisis. That we are in April. This thing's supposed to end by December.
Yep.
A chunk of our banks are not clear whether they're going to make it. The president is setting up a committee. We, the ordinary people, have our monies here and there. If we're not careful, when we have a run on this indigenous bank, they'll be out of business before even what?
The December 31st. Yes, Honorable.
A few things.
Yes.
The team to advise the president is made up of 3 from Bank of Ghana, 3 from Ministry of Finance, and then 1 from the presidency. And they have up to 26th of May, just a month away, to be able to advise. So I don't think that period would really affect their program and plan.
Question: Don't you do you or do you not share the view that this intervention by the president is going to undermine the authority of the Bank of Ghana, whichever way the committee goes in terms of advice?
No, I think the president is rather opening up a window for further discussions. If you think you have a case, present your case to the Bank of Ghana and Ministry of Finance for all of us to discuss. I don't want to get the impression that you appeal to me and I've shut the door. We have brought a proposal. Let those who are in charge look at the proposal and also tell us the way forward. If they come back and say that we've looked at the proposal, it's not feasible. Because mind you, if going back, all this is based on comprehensive asset quality review by the Bank of Ghana, way back in 2016. And then when they did the review, they said that there's severe deterioration in asset quality. So we have to wake up, otherwise the average person will suffer. Nobody will even have confidence in our banking system. Already 2 down, 1, 2 under management. So if you really mean business to do this banking business, then by end of this year, you should have met the minimum capital requirement.
But why is it so difficult carry on?
They are saying that they cannot meet it, and if you are not careful, foreigners will take over our banking system. That is their major position, and that government too has not been doing well for them as far as major businesses, etc., are concerned. That is the case for the indigenous banks, and that if they are given more opportunity, within 4 or 5 years, they'll be able to meet that target. But Bank of Ghana is also saying that we cannot wait that long, because already what we see on the horizon is very dire. And for us to wait that long, it means you want more people to suffer. So sit down rather and see how you can clean up the system.
But is there fear of a foreign, if you like, takeover of the sector?
Yes.
Is it real? And if it's real,
real in the sense that there are a lot of people waiting in the wings to give that shore up, to give them that capital they need. But of course, they will ask for equity. Of course, it means they may end up being majority shareholders. So of course, that means that foreign interest would have come in. But if they come in as foreign interest, it still means that they are under the regulations of Bank of Ghana. Except that you may not say that indigenous bank, an individual Ghanaian or group of Ghanaians have come together and they owe 80% of it.
But why is it so difficult, or why does it seem difficult for the banks, the indigenous banks who are petitioning, to merge?
Well, I cannot speak for them.
Obviously not, but I just want you to,
Prof was trying to speak for them by saying that merger is too late. But if they make the effort,
if they had even considered it,
Bank of Ghana may say that, okay, we are ready to add 3 months to it for you to reach that deadline. But if you don't make that effort at all, but you bring a program that ends in 2022, the Bank of Ghana will say that, how do I wait this long when I'm supposed to protect the average person who does business with you?
Right.
So hopefully by 26 May, when the committee has completed this report, some of these things will be clear in the sense that you came, we have listened to you. Listening to you, this is the picture. If we go beyond this, these are the consequences. So those who can meet it, try and meet it. Those who can't, find a plan B or plan C. Otherwise, we will apply the sanctions under the law. The law gives them that power.
Right.
That
Exactly.
if you don't meet this requirement, this is what we will do.
Right.
And then we move forward. And there will be some sanitization in the whole banking system, because the 120 has not helped us. And those, if we can make them bigger and stronger, the average person will have confidence in our banking
Very
system.
well. Doc, your perspective on this, how are you seeing this from, well, I know you're
so
here
if the President's Committee, if the President's Committee come out and say that, okay, we should hold on, what then happens? Or
the committee is built up a Bank of Ghana and Ministry of Finance.
So it means the committee is set up to support the Bank of Ghana already. That's the point he's making. You understand? Yes. You see, there's something in economics called central bank independence. I don't really like it. Independent of who? Somebody has a mandate to rule and to grow the economy. What you do has impact on that mandate. And you say you have independence. But we have enshrined it into law already. So we need to respect it. But I think that we need to take a holistic view of the way we do banking in this country. The central bank is now independent and can determine its own policies. But it has impact on the rest of us, particularly the banks. In this specific case, we shouldn't have gotten to this point. Has the Bank of Ghana been working with the banks all this while? What solutions have they preferred all this while? Now, you come out and give them about a year to more than triple their capital adequacy. I mean, if you ask the Bank of Ghana to triple its capital, maybe they have the power to print. So they will print. So I think there's a fundamental issue here. Less than a year to triple. If three banks
from September 2017.
That's about a year and 3 months. If three domestic banks merge, it will, and they currently have 120 million each, it will not be enough.
So you go on 4, you get 480 over and above.
And then the complications get bigger. Now they have few months to get to that point. Okay. So then the complications, as Prof mentioned.
Release some of their shares. That's what
Prof mentioned. But releasing the shares, who is going to take them up?
And people are willing to take them, right?
You see, does it tie in with this idea of making Ghana a financial hub of West Africa, where now the financial system is taken over by foreigners?
Foreigners, right?
Foreign dominance is real. I mean, I'm not here to bash the banks, but take some of the major foreign banks in this country. They've never put a single building in this town. They are all renting. It shows the level of their commitment to this country. Barclays, have they built?
I don't save them.
That does not answer the question.
Why I save they have those?
That does not answer the question.
Building goes to treatment of assets.
But you see, it should also tell you that when you are talking about foreign dominance, it has consequences for many of the things we do in this country.
The leftists.
He said he's here on piano. Carry on.
This is not about leftism. But I think that we should take a serious view when we have a measure supposedly to help all of us, but it has consequences for the larger economic environment. We should be careful not to simply say that this is the deadline, must go back. We must take steps to talk with people and to attempt to address the issues. But this committee that is listening to them, which is already appear rigged.
Really?
That's what he says.
Let's be careful. He didn't say that. That was your interpretation.
So I think that we could have a possibility of having tiered banks. Must every bank in Ghana be a universal bank? We could have capital adequacy ratios for different types of banks. And if the domestic banks will serve a certain purpose, they could have a lower threshold. That is what I think we should do. And not lump all the banks together.
We still call them banks,
but it's just they have the various tiers.
5-star, 3-star.
Exactly, yes. And yes, so that it gives the respective minimum levels.
The financial institutions that take this to sue financial institutions. I mean, they are ripping off. Look at what happened in Bro, half region. Microfinance. I don't know what kind of regulation is set for them.
They are also under regulation.
Yes, so if they are under regulation, Bank of Ghana should actually be very upbeat. I mean, and strong on regulating them, because you see, those who suffer their maladministration are the ordinary farmers and businessmen.
Yeah.
And they are those who grow this economy. You see?
Which is a concern I have with this intervention coming in from the executive. Because I don't know how this is going to go, but however it goes, it's going to set a precedent. Then the next minute, you're trying to be strict on microfinance. They rush to is it Jubilee House now or something else? And all those things. So for me, let's just keep the regulator and those being regulated
we try to be
in one area,
when
and then
see a problem on the horizon. The question is, why did we sit down between 2012 and now to see such deterioration
in the assets?
Could we have increased the rate in 2013, 2014, and wait on, or rather than wait until 2017? So there's something also for the Bank of Ghana to address.
How about we giving licenses all over the place?
And renewing the licenses.
When
we were witnessing the deterioration.
There was this major issue about microfinance. Then President Mahama in Parliament, State of the Nation, he said if it's microfinance, we should ask the Governor of Bank of Ghana. That is how the situation was. You felt that it's the governor who hasn't done his work well. That's why we are in this mess. But once there's a mess, the government, you can't take yourself out of it. Once there's a mess, it will engulf the government. So the point about whether we should wait till 2022, I think that the president has taken the best decision that this committee should sit down with them and let them know the implications. And then the other thing too is that they say indigenous banks, but some are doing well. You should be careful we don't lump all of them together, or they should not attempt to ride on the back of others. I think it should be on its own merits.
Right.
It should be on its own. Maybe you have a small percentage to be able to meet.
Probably we are seeing them as doing well. In fact, recent events do not convince me
that they are doing well.
They are doing well.
No, some.
But then raises issues about how quickly or how the central bank has intervened in these matters to see us come to a point where perhaps, we're on a slippery road.
If it's 400, some might need just a little to meet that threshold. Some too may really allow themselves to be taken over. So they cannot be in the same situation. Some local banks are doing well. I don't want to mention names because you might think that I saved there. But
well, you've told us where you don't save. We know that. You've told us where you don't save. We know that. Yeah. We know that. Well, your concluding remarks on this?
No, for me, I think we need to be careful. We have a short time to finalize on this. The president have taken a step. I think the president could have done this without making it public. Consult. Without make it public. But he made it public. Let's manage it very well.
Was it the president who did that, or they went and
No. I mean, setting up the committee.
Setting up of the committee.
The president can say, "I've listened to you. I'm going to talk to my people. Let's discuss it, and then they can come up with a decision so that they don't create another incentive." Because what we know now, we are waiting to May what? May
26th.
Yes. So this do not be waiting because they may not put in more effort to try to mobilize this 400 million. But let's not think that these banks are sitting down for December to come to be hit by this thing. They are doing some work. They have options, is that correct? And they want to try the president too. So the president gives us some hope. I put in the committee. Let's see how it goes. But we need to be careful that come by September, if we don't get this thing resolved, there could be a possibility that the uncertainty in the system that will cause us more harm than we actually thought about.
Very Honorable Fuseni.
It's just about duties and responsibilities. The Bank of Ghana must be seen to be up and doing. And to assure all of us in Ghana that whoever is regulating or conducting financial businesses here in this country is meeting the requirements of the law. And banks must up their game so that we can have confidence in them.
Right.
Yeah, I think the Bank of Ghana, like you said, should not wait to get us to a crisis point. Because now this May 12th is a crisis date. I think we should try as much as possible to preempt some of these things. And let them have their own discussions at the back door, unknown to, say, the depositors. Because this can really create a panic, where people will then begin to save under their pillows.
But as it is now, it's out there. Yes, Honorable.
That would be dangerous for us.
Take us home.
If our banking system loses the kind of confidence that it should have, then all of us will be in trouble because the economy then will suffer. Yes. And I believe that this step should still bring them to the table and then see how we take them each by its own case and see how some can be saved and some may be given a moratorium, but certainly not the 5 years that some of them are requesting.
Are looking for
yes.
till 2022.
Yes.
Well, on that note, I'd say a big thank you to you, my panelists, Honorable Obi Amwa, Dr. Kwabena Otu, Professor Clement Jidonu, and the Honorable Inusa Abdullahi Hussaini. But also thank you to you viewers, listeners out there for making a date with us. We appreciate your time. Unfortunately, we couldn't read your text message or WhatsApp messages to us due to some technical challenges. We hope to do that next week when we are back here in the studios. My name is Abna Tebi. Until we see you next week, have a good weekend and a productive week. Bye-bye.